your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition with Jeanette Roche.
Hello, and thanks for joining us for a look back at Alberta this week. Some pretty wild weather in southern Alberta this past Wednesday. Many people were alerted by their phones that we were under a tornado warning, which was then upgraded to a tornado watch. There was a twister spotted by Picture Butte, Alberta, and here's a video coming up of a funnel cloud that was shot on a phone near Brooks. The video was recorded by Dennis Jackson. There were at least 8 funnel clouds spotted across southern Alberta that day. Some pretty intense stuff there. And even more crazy weather in southern Alberta this week. If you were planning to do some hiking at Waterton Lakes National Park, you might want to rethink those plans. A recent rainstorm caused damage to some of the hiking trails and other areas of the park. As Angela Stewart explains, the storm caused both flooding and rock slides, which closed a portion of the park.
Over a 2-hour period, upwards of 50 millimeters of rain poured over the Waterton town site in Crandall Mountain Sunday evening. About 5 people were caught in the storm. All were uninjured and were airlifted to safety. Now officials are working diligently to clean up the closed-off areas.
When we initially got this rainfall, it was a very significant rain event in a very short period of time. So we observed rock slides in areas such as Bear Sump Trail right away. And upon observing that, we decided that further assessment was needed before we could open up other areas of the park.
Other trails that were impacted were Akamenia Parkway and Red Rock Parkway. But as of Wednesday afternoon, Red Rock has been reopened to the public. The downpour follows nearly 6 years since the Keenan wildfires ripped through the town, and Meidinger says regrow and recovery in the park has been ongoing since then.
That's been a really long ongoing process. This is another event that will take some time to recover from. Initial assessments appear that damage isn't going to be as significant as it was during Keenan. Those assessments are still ongoing.
Although portions of the park are closed off, the town site remains open to the public.
Right now, everything in the town site is open. And to be honest, drive through the town site, you would not even know that anything had ever happened. So all the businesses are open.
Suleiman, who also owns Bayshore Inn and Spa, doesn't believe the storm will have an effect on tourism to the southern Alberta hotspot in the long term.
People have been calling to say, should we cancel? Is the park closed? Is it flooded? And we're kind of saying, no, it's not flooded. The park's not closed. Everything you want to do, no problem. You'll have no problems doing it. So I think that's probably the frustration from business owners is the confusion.
Well, Parks Canada says this is an evolving situation and they will continue to take a measured approach when it comes to reopening up all the areas and parkways. Adding a full understanding of all the impacts from Sunday's rainfall will take some time. For Bridge City News, I'm Angela Stewart.
Officials say that only 15% of the park is closed, but to check the Parks Canada website for updated information. Alberta police say they anticipate even more people will come forward after a former actor was charged with sexual exploitation and sexual assault in the province. The Tsuut'ina Nation Police Service says Nathan Chasing Horse, who starred in the film Dances with Wolves, faces 9 charges, including one of removing a child from Canada under the age of 16.
So as a result of additional criminal charges from Fort Peck, Montana, and Karamias, British Columbia, as well as ongoing criminal proceedings in Nevada, the prosecution of Nathan Chasing Horse in different legal jurisdictions has required significant planning and cooperation between prosecutors. On June 8th of 2023, the Tsuut'ina Nation Police Service put forward an application for arrest warrants, and this was further supported by our Alberta Crown Prosecutors Services. The following warrants have been put on the system in relation to Nathan Chasing Horse. 3 counts of sexual exploitation, 4 counts of sexual assault, 1 count of sexual interference with a person under the age of 16, 1 count of removal of child from Canada under the age of 16. This investigation has spanned over the course of several years, with one of our offences dating back to 2005.
Alberta Health Services says it's rescinding continuous masking requirements in the province. As of Monday, June 19th, AHS will no longer require continuous masking at all AHS facilities. That will include continuing care and contracted sites. Officials say it will apply to all patients, families, and visitors, along with Alberta Precision Labs, Covenant Health, Capital Care, and Care West sites. It will also apply to all AHS and contracted staff, including doctors, midwives, students, volunteers, and contractors. AHS says masks will still be available in all settings for patients and healthcare workers who choose to wear them. Well, stay tuned. After the break, we bring you an update on the Alberta forest fires and a conversation about investigations into the possibilities of arson as a cause. Keep it right here. The mother involved in the sexual assault case of an infant pleaded guilty Friday morning in a Lethbridge courtroom. The mother, who cannot be named under a publication ban, has pled guilty to one charge of failing to provide the necessaries of life after her 6-week-old daughter was found with extensive injuries in January after police received a welfare tip. An agreed statement of facts was read, and court learned that the baby girl was born in early December and was an overall healthy child with 0 complications. Following the abuse, the infant suffered a seizure on the way to the hospital, as well as a brain bleed. Doctors were unsure if the child would even survive because her injuries were so severe. The mother's matter has been put over to August 18th for sentencing. The father accused in this case has had his matter adjourned to next week. The government of Alberta released information as to the causes of many of the wildfires that we've been experiencing. According to fire officials, 376 of the wildfires were caused by people. Lightning was the culprit for 137 fires, and 128 fires are currently under investigation. More than 13,600 Albertans are still out of their homes due to the wildfires. Evacuation orders remain in place for 5 areas of the province, including around the hamlet of Fort Chipewyan in the northern part of the province. Officials say close to $31 million has been given out to evacuees in support. Special air quality statements remain in effect for areas in the central and northern regions. Alberta still has around 2,700 personnel working on the blazes, including partner agencies from across Canada, the U.S., Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and our Canadian military. Later in the show, we'll dive a bit deeper into the causes with the fires, and that will be with Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilly. Well, cooler temperatures and rain are helping firefighters battling a wildfire near the town of Edson, Alberta. The blaze, which was around 2,000 square kilometers in size, located just 1.5 kilometers from the northern Alberta community. Town officials say the air quality was extremely poor this week due to those fires. Alberta Public Safety Minister Mike Ellis says financial help continues to flow to the thousands of evacuees who are in dire need of help, including those in Edson.
Folks from this area who have registered with the province now qualify for the emergency evacuation payments. The Alberta Supports Centre in Hinton has extended hours to support evacuees from Edson and Yellowhead County. Any Albertan who has been evacuated under the mandatory evacuation order from their primary residence for 7 days or more can apply for a one-time emergency evacuation payment to help during the duration, of course, during this very difficult time. Even residents who have returned home after being evacuated for a short period and then re-evacuated again are still eligible if they've been out of their homes for 7 days total.
Last week, we introduced you to an inspiring individual who dropped everything to head towards the wildfires in northern Alberta and Northwest Territories. The former head chef spent 3 weeks cooking meals for hundreds of displaced wildfire evacuees out of a Salvation Army kitchen truck. Here's an excerpt of my interview with Stephen Roach. What was the general feeling when you were there? Were they scared? Was it like apprehension, anxiety, or was it just kind of like, this is how it is?
When we first got up there, it was, they didn't know what to expect with us arriving up there to do what we were sent up there to do. But the second day, when you had people come to the truck and saying thank you, and they wanted to come up into the truck and have a look of the kitchen facilities and stuff like that, it made me feel a lot at ease with myself and with them. So that way, I knew I was doing something good for the community itself by serving meals to them. So,
What were some of the most heartbreaking stories that you were hearing?
people talking about losing everything that they own. That was very hard. Like, especially when they left with the only thing they had was a small little bag and the clothes on their back. So that was very hard. It bothered me to see people in that state of, you know, something that I've never seen before until I went up there, because I've always been on the other side of the fence. Like, I used to be a firefighter, so you see one side, and then I do this, and now I'm on the opposite side of it, trying to help the people that are very in distress.
You can catch that full interview with Stephen Roach on Bridge City News' YouTube channel. Up next, with Canada on fire, we dive deeper into what the causes are behind these numerous blazes. That's after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. For weeks, wildfires have been burning in Alberta and across the country, but many aren't talking about what's causing these blazes. Some are blaming climate change, while others are saying that they're being set on purpose by humans. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith had an investigation conducted to see if there's an arson connection. Our federal political contributor and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilly chatted with BCN's Hal Roberts this week about this very topic. Have a look.
How much proof is there that a number of these fires were in fact deliberately set?
I don't know that there's proof yet or there'd be charges laid, but I can tell you straight across the country, whether it's in Ontario, Quebec, Alberta, various police forces are investigating certain fires for arson. It's interesting looking at the provincial data. In Alberta right now, for this year, as I said, as of this morning, I believe it was 634 wildfires so far this year. Only about 78, I think, are still active. Most have been extinguished. In Alberta, the majority are listed as human caused. And there's some great data sets from the provincial government that you can go through and look at and say, okay, well, when they say human caused, what do they mean? And it'll say campers cooking, fire got started. ATV, hot exhaust. If you're an ATV rider and it's really dry out, don't go out into the forest. That apparently starts a lot of fires. ATV, hot exhaust in very dry conditions. And you see all of these things listed down. So as I said, about 58% so far in Alberta are human caused, about 20% are lightning, and then the rest are unknown or undetermined at this time. In British Columbia, very different geography, very different settlement patterns. We're talking about 60% to 70% in any given year are caused by lightning. So it varies depending on where you live. And Premier Smith saying that, yeah, we should be investigating if some of these are caused by arson. Yeah, absolutely, because some of them are. Every single year, some of them are. But there is this narrative that we just have to blame all the wildfires on climate change. That would be irresponsible to do that. If there are people setting fires, you catch them, you charge them, you prosecute them. That's how it should be. So, people are getting upset at her, saying she's politicizing things when in fact, it's the other way around.
In other news, 4 men accused of conspiring to kill RCMP officers during a protest and blockade near the Coutts border last year are scheduled to sit through pretrial motions and applications. Lawyers defending the men want the judge hearing the case to adjourn much of the preliminary proceedings and order the Crown to provide more disclosure. Christopher Lysak of Lethbridge, Anthony Oleanick of Clare's Home, Chris Carbert of Lethbridge, and Jerry Morin of Olds, Alberta, were arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit murder in February of 2022 during the Coutts border blockade. A cache of weapons, ammunition, and body armor was discovered in a trailer on private property near the blockade. Naveen Day has been covering this trial all week and is here now. Naveen, tell our viewers what took place this week.
Well, Jeanette, this actually wasn't the trial for the 4 accused as originally planned. The trial by jury was originally scheduled to start this week, but instead, the court heard procedural matters. This is called a voir dire, which is a mini trial within a trial. Lawyers representing the accused asked the court to issue a publication ban on the documents required to obtain warrants. This is the information that led to the seizure of weapons and ammunition near the blockade. However, Tess Layton, who represents several Canadian media outlets and the New York Times, argued that there should not be a publication ban, especially since the information is already out in the public domain. We also heard from defense lawyer Greg Dunn, who asked Justice David Lebrenz for an adjournment of the trial. He accused the Crown of breaches of failure to provide full disclosure in a timely manner, stating that some documents had only been disclosed days prior. The judge is also expected to hear an application to hold the trial in another jurisdiction other than Lethbridge. During much of this mini-trial, we also heard testimony from RCMP officers and investigators and the information they were able to obtain from undercover officers. RCMP Chief Superintendent Kevin Kunetsky said an undercover officer indicated that there was a stash of guns and thousands of rounds of ammunition. Kunetsky said that information was key in determining that there was an imminent danger to police officers. The voir dire is expected to last until the end of the month. The dates and location of the trial for the 4 accused have yet to be determined. Jeanette?
Thanks so much, Naveen. We need to take a quick break, but when we return, a political career cut short by a misconstrued private message that was leaked. That's next. Stay with us.
They were suggesting that I sympathized with terrorism effectively, and that wasn't true.
As we've seen in recent weeks, social media and political life can be a minefield with retaliations, lies, and conjecture. Caitlin Ford had been a star candidate for the UCP in a Calgary riding during the 2019 provincial election until she was labeled a racist and was declared guilty in the court of public opinion, and in a very short time was canceled. She claims it was a setup, that her comments were out of context and misrepresented. Now a documentary sharing her side of the story has recently been released called When the Mob Came. Take a look at this.
Controversy surrounding a United Conservative Party candidate has caused her to step down.
Yes, Caitlin Ford has resigned as a UCP candidate in the riding of Calgary Mountain View after a report claiming she echoed white nationalist rhetoric.
What was shared was her private messages. She was engaged in a Facebook chat with somebody.
The accusation was that she had said something in a private conversation that had echoed the words of white supremacists.
I recently had the chance to chat with Caitlin Ford to discuss the ordeal and fallout that she experienced and how she became victorious in the court case that followed. Have a look. Caitlin, as painful as it might still be, can you take us back to that time when the accusations arose? What happened exactly? What was the conversation that kind of started this firestorm?
Sure. So I was running in the 2019 provincial election as a United Conservative Party candidate in a real swing riding. So it was a constituency that Conservatives hadn't won in 20 years, and I was running against the then Justice Minister for the NDP, as well as the leader of the Liberal Party. And yet polls showed, as we got closer to the election, that it was very much a toss-up. Our internal polling showed I was on track to win. I assume the other parties had the same polling. And under those circumstances, the NDP had there's an organization called the Broadbent Institute, which runs a quasi-media outlet called Press Progress. And this is effectively the opposition research mill of the NDP. During the election, it was very aggressively putting out negative stories about Conservative candidates. And in that way, these stories would be able to sort of move into the mainstream. And so a month before the election, less than a month actually, the night before the writs drop, Press Progress published an article claiming that in a private conversation years earlier, that I had, in their words, echoed the rhetoric of white nationalists and complained that white supremacist terrorists are treated unfairly. Now, the record of this private conversation was never publicly disclosed. I did not have it, so I couldn't effectively refute these accusations at the time. As it turned out, I now know from litigation that they did, in fact, deceptively edit and redact the excerpts of this private conversation that they published. And they framed it in such a way, this is right after the, you may recall the Christchurch Mosque massacre, where 50 people were killed at prayer in New Zealand. And so right after this massacre, they were suggesting that I sympathized with terrorism effectively. And that wasn't true. I had a background in studying counterterrorism and international security studies. I was actually talking about how to more effectively deal with radicalization.
Wow. Okay. So, well, maybe to an outside observer, it could seem like these accusations came swiftly and suddenly. So, from your point of view now, do you see this as a coordinated attack, or do you think it was just him on his own?
I very much believe that there was a great element of collusion here that's been borne out in the court record. So I actually had to get a restraining order against this person. That restraining order was only very recently upheld by a trial judge, and that decision actually led to the recognition of a new tort of civil harassment in Alberta. So this is kind of the thing that you don't see when you see the headlines, is that there are layers and layers behind the story. And in this case, I think the truth was much stranger than the fiction that was concocted. But yes, I have alleged in a defamation claim against the NDP and Press Progress that this was very much a result of deliberate planning and collusion, that they were planning this for several months, that they decided to release this story right before the writs dropped, because that's when it would do the most harm to my candidacy. And a trial judge seemed to agree with that assessment as well, that was deliberately planned to maximize the harm that it would cause me. So it was not in a matter of legitimate public interest. It was about a sort of calculated attempt to destroy a person's reputation for political gain.
When we return, a former member of the mainstream media speaks out about what she saw as unbalanced and biased reporting in the newsroom during the pandemic. When she questioned it, she lost her job. That's next. Stay with us.
Why did the news not report that? Why did the news keep you shut in your house without getting vitamin D and exercise? That's what keeps you healthy.
Welcome back. Many Canadians put their trust in the media to get fair, balanced, and factual news, but a growing number of Canadians are discovering their trust in mainstream media is wavering. Anita Krishna is a former newscast director with more than 20 years' experience working in the mainstream media. She says she was fired from Global National News in Vancouver because she questioned the narrative her employer was pushing and not offering proper balance in regards to COVID-19 related stories. She shares with BCN's Naveen Day the red flags that started to go up during this time. Have a look.
Now, in a video that is posted on your website, anitakrishna.com, from February of 2022, you spoke at a rally in Vancouver. You said, quote, "I think the most misinformation that has ever been spread in the past 2 years has come from mainstream media." But then you said that your heart was broken. Tell us, what was brewing in your conscience, and what was your reaction to the news being covered in the way that it was?
Well, all the misinformation. I mean, how dare anybody accuse us of spreading, or people who are just trying to find another side, of spreading misinformation, when it was the mainstream news that avoided talking about medications. If you really care about our health, you would say, hey, there are some medications that have been studied and they are viable treatments. You don't then care about my health if you're hiding that from me. Also, if doctors are being banned and their licenses are being suspended, which we all well know that has happened to doctors who tried to prescribe these medications, which I won't name, why did the news not report that? Why did the news keep you shut in your house without getting vitamin D and exercise? That's what keeps you healthy. You know what else keeps you healthy? Going to your AA meetings so you don't relapse. Going to church so you have spiritual gatherings. Masking. 3 years in, you expect me to wear a mask on my face? You got to be out of your mind. So all these measures were driving misinformation, clear as day.
And many of us have heard about those who have recovered from symptoms by taking medications that weren't officially sanctioned by health authorities, and and some of them are people that are known to us. So wouldn't that be something that would be newsworthy and worth investigating into?
Absolutely. Of course it is. It's if you don't tell the public, there are certain doctors prescribing medication and healing people, and they're getting their license suspended. That's why your average neighbor and man on the street doesn't know. That's the job of the news, to inform them of all the other things that are going on.
Now, when you did speak up, how did your leaders and coworkers respond to your concerns and the news story ideas about people recovering or the possibility or increased numbers of miscarriages that you were talking about?
Oh, they just completely dismissed me. They just thought that there was only one answer. I was completely disregarded, bullied, and suspended. No, I was not given any. They treat you like a crazy person, and to shut up, immediately shut up, or they just wave you with dismissal, or they, they go like that, or I would get emails from my boss saying I needed to stop talking about COVID. Well, that's the whole business. That was the whole name of the game for 2.5 years. They're the ones talking about COVID. That's the driving the whole newscast. So don't tell me to stop talking about that. And that's what they did.
I was one of the few people from Bridge City News selected to travel to Ottawa to cover the Freedom Convoy in early 2022. And the first thing I witnessed was this Canadian love being spread. I saw people dancing, hugging, they were handing out hot chocolate and warm clothes and food. And what I saw in Ottawa was really the opposite to what I had seen on the mainstream media before I went out there. So when I went out there, the only instructions that we were given were just to walk around and report on what we saw, like be journalists. But it seems as if the MSN journalists in larger markets were given directives, because it looked like they were either looking for negatives or trying to skew the events that took place in a seemingly misleading way.
Anybody that went to the convoy saw what you just described: love, unity, happiness, hope, family, right? What we saw on the news was, the truckers have desecrated the Terry Fox Memorial. There's one Confederate flag. Oh, please. Never in my entire life have I seen a protest covered this way by news ever. And it was to shape bias. It was actually one of the most disappointing things I've ever seen.
After the break, a look at the economy here in southern Alberta. That's next. Keep it right here.